Hello everyone, my name is Taylor Razvani, and in this lesson we will be looking at data visualization. So this is really the what, why, when, and how of using visuals to present your data. The first piece is the what. And the what is a visual representation of information. So this might include charts, graphs, or even potentially animations. And this is taking your data, so you might have a data table, you might have numbers written in a paragraph, taking that and showing that in a visual way. Why might somebody choose to do this? One key piece that you get from displaying your data in this way is that you can illustrate the relationships between data points in a very clear way. If you see two circles that are different sizes next to each other, it's very quick to see that one is bigger than the other. When you are looking at numbers, sometimes it can be a little harder to extrapolate these relationships so quickly. This also gives context, so you can give a bit of background information around the data as you are displaying it. It can increase accessibility, so again, you are easing the way that your audience can connect with the data and make sense of it. You are showing visually and guiding, giving scaffolding on how to potentially interpret the data as you're presenting it visually. And it can improve clarity because we are adding that context, we are increasing that accessibility, and so your audience is more clear on what makes the data important, what makes it relevant, how it relates to the context that is important, and what are the relationships between the different data points. When might you see a data visualization? This is anytime that you are supporting a claim. So you have data to support a claim and you want to show visually what makes your data support that. So now we're going to jump into the how, and there's a few different points that we are going to cover within this. We will discuss the goal, the format, the accuracy, and also the aesthetic. So when you are considering how to incorporate data visualization, what is your goal? What format might you use? How might you be very accurate in your presentation of your data? And what aesthetic pieces might you want to consider? So identifying those key ideas and the best fit format, looking at your labels, layout, scale, context, and your colors or tone or the accessibility piece. All of these we will consider moving forward. So the first piece is the goal. What do you hope to convey through your data visualization? And the first piece of this is what data best support your claim. So really looking at what is to be included and in what context. So considering these pieces will give you a better sense of what you're actually going to present. The next piece to look at is how can you best convey your claim? So using that data, thinking about your interpretation of it, how can you best situate the two? So you might want to use a pie chart. If you have a data set that adds up to 100%, maybe a pie chart so that you can see this many of the animals were cats and this percentage of the animals. So this percentage of the animals were cats, this percentage of the animals were dogs, 50% and 50%. If, however, your numbers do not add up to 100%, then perhaps a bar graph. Maybe you were looking at multiple articles and one article was fully on dogs, one was fully on cats, but then one was on cats and dogs. So there, that skews your 100% a bit, and of the three, you have 2/3 are for each species. So really thinking about what is the best way to show what I'm trying to show, and knowing that there are different ways you might do this. If you're talking about locations, perhaps you have a map. Maybe you have a combination of these different ways of doing this. Perhaps you have a bar graph with a line graph over top of it as well. And this can be 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional as you are presenting it. And all of these pieces you want to be mindful of why you are choosing to present it in the way you are choosing, which should be because it is the most effective way to communicate what you hope to communicate visually. It's of course important to consider the accuracy, so you want to make sure that you have the correct data. You want to show the correct thing. You want to have very clear labels, use the appropriate scale and the appropriate context. So for example, when we look at this map, we don't know what it is showing because we don't have any labels here to tell us. Now, when we think of the norms, we might think, oh, maybe this is a heat map and it's showing temperature. And I think of red as hot and blue as cold. And maybe that is what it's showing. Or maybe red is more and blue is less, green is less. So those pieces your audience will be considering as they are looking at your visual representation and considering the context that they are looking at. We're looking at a map here and the scaling of it. So we can see by the way that this is scaled what type of information we are considering. So for example, if you see a graph like this, that gives an indication of this kind of up and down movement along the y-axis. However, if you were to zoom in on that and only be presented with this portion of the graph, then that might imply a decline. So thinking of the scale of this, if you zoom way out and it looks like a flat line, but if you zoom really close in, then it looks like there's more peaks and valleys. All of these pieces are important to consider in how you are accurately representing the information that you have and guiding your audience. So here, for example, if you zoom in on this part, it looks pretty flat and consistent. So again, really being mindful of what are we looking at in this data. We also want to consider the aesthetic. So you can integrate a sort of playfulness in what the content is. If you have perhaps you have buildings that you are using to show height, and you have actual images of the buildings rather than just a simple bar graph, considering the color. So there are colors that you might use that would be supportive of the audience accessibility and some that might be distracting. You want to look at the tone as well and the accessibility, making sure your contrast is appropriate between your text and your color used, as well as, again, this creativity piece of, are you integrating the content and the subject matter into how you are presenting that actual visual in a way that is aesthetically pleasing as well as being clear and accessible. Of course, consider any specific items related to your assignment or your course and reach out to your instructor with any questions that you have. Thank you.